Hello, Good Hope. We're back together again as we are addressing questions that come from time to time. One of these questions came from our young adults when I was over at Scott Luann's one evening. And the question came, how can Jesus be both God and man at the same time in the same body? And so that is a very good question. And so that is one of the mysteries of Scripture that we need to hold the tension, even though our finite mind cannot fully explain it, but I'm going to build this. So Jesus was fully divine and fully man at the exact same time in the same body. Jesus was not half God and half man. There wasn't a dividing line between the two, but he was fully God and fully man at the exact same time. There's a theological term out there called a hypostatic union. You don't have to know that exhaustively. But what it is it means that there is two natures in one body in perfect unity and in perfect harmony would be the hypostatic union. So, first of all, let's look that Jesus is fully God. Well, he has to be. So there are some verses that I want to read to you, and the first one is John chapter 1, verse 1, where it says, "In the beginning was the Word." That is, the Word is Jesus, was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. John chapter 1, verse 14 says that the Word, I'm paraphrasing, took on flesh and dwelt among people. In Colossians chapter 2, verse 9, it says that the entire fullness of God dwells bodily in Jesus Christ. And then Hebrews chapter 1, verse 3 says that the exact radiance, the full expression of God is seen in Jesus Christ. And being fully God, Jesus demonstrated divine attributes that are very important. So he forgave sins. He accepted worship. That is key. Jesus accepted worship. He raised from the dead, and he claimed equality with God the Father in John chapter 10, verse 30. So he's fully God. Well, he's also fully man. And so he experienced genuine humanity. For instance, born a little boy, he grew up, he was a young boy, then he was a teenager, and then he's a young man, died around the age of 33. But he experienced everything. So he was born of the Virgin Mary in Luke chapter 2. The man grew in wisdom, Luke 2. He became tired, he was fatigued in John chapter 4. He was hungry, he needed to eat. There's the man side of him in Matthew chapter 4. He wept in John chapter 11, and he suffered and died in Mark 15. God can't die, but the man can die. And then it tells us in Hebrews chapter 2, verse 17, I'm going to read this. It says, "Therefore, he had to be like his brothers and sisters in every way, so that he could become a merciful and faithful high priest in matters pertaining to God to make atonement for the sins of the people." So Jesus had to be both fully God and fully man. So there is two distinct natures in harmony with one another that are there in one person, that is Jesus Christ. His divine nature never stopped being God. His human nature never stopped being fully human. So these were united without mixing, without blending, but they are in perfect harmony. So two persons, one nature in one body. Well, I'm sorry, there's two natures in one body. Sorry about that. So why was this necessary? You say, well, why did Jesus have to do it this way? Well, we have to go back into the Old Testament and look how God set things up going all the way back to Genesis. Humanity had sinned in Genesis chapter 3, referred to as the fall. A human had to obey where Adam and every other person failed. And a human had to die in our place. There's a phrase called substitutionary atonement. Mankind had a price to pay for their sin, so a representative of mankind had to pay the price. Adam was the representative and he failed. So now the perfect representative had to come to pay the price that we deserved. Also, in Hebrews chapter 2, verse 14 says this, that because we share flesh and blood with Jesus, he shared them as well. So Jesus was flesh and blood, though he was fully God and fully man. Now, why do we need all of this? Well, it is only God that could bear the full weight of the wrath of God, because a mortal man, the human could not do that in and of himself. He was perfect. He didn't sin, but he couldn't carry the weight. So God himself had to bear the weight there. Also, there needed to be a perfect sacrifice for humanity. Only God could create the perfect sacrifice because every other human had failed. So only God could do that. And then only God has the power to conquer sin and death. Only God could forgive sin, and only God could cause Jesus to get up out of that grave and walk. So, a simple summary would be something like this: that as God, Jesus could save. As a man, Jesus could stand in our place. But only Jesus, the one and only unique God-man, could do both at the same time. That is why it had to be. Because if Jesus were only a man only, he would have failed, he would have sinned, and he wouldn't have been the perfect sacrifice. And if Jesus was only God, okay, when you look at the substitutionary atonement, there had to be a man to substitute, to die in our place. So Jesus, the way God set it up, is fully man, fully God in one perfect union.